love the concept behind this album. It's about living in the present and embracing the twists and turns that make this journey so worthwhile. That spirit lives and breathes in this album, where it's everything that we love about you, the vulnerability, those life confirming ballads, the powerhouse vocals, but it also has a lot of fun exploration with your sound, your range, and your lyricism. And through it, there's a confidence that really shines through. What's played the biggest part in that development in your artistry?
I mean, thank you for the lovely words. I think just the confidence for me feels like it's the biggest defining factor of the creative. I feel like, with this third album, I just kind of had a bit of a realization of being like, oh, I definitely this is my day job. Like this isn't just luck. This isn't just like, running on the back of a cover. This is a genuine. I've got three big monster songs behind me. I've got music that has changed people's lives. I'm about to run
Mhm.
back on a third world tour. I've been trusted to sing to the king of my country to sing with Ed Sheeran in stadiums across America, Australia, and Asia and Europe. It's like there's so many affirming things for me that I finally had to go, okay, you're doing all right. Like you can settle into the fact that you're probably not going to go back to working in a grocery store. And I think that kind of like gave me just a confidence that I was like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, maybe I can now start to worry less and, scrutinize less and enjoy it more. I know that sounds ridiculous because I'm doing a job I love, but you get so caught up in like, is it going to be good for radio? Is it going to be good on TikTok? What's going to happen with the campaign? Is it going to be radio friendly? And it's like, you get so caught up in the industry of it that you forget about the enjoyment of just making the record, right?
Mhm.
So I think for me, the confidence and the reassurance that I gave myself just gave me so much more creative freedom to play around in country and to play around in the more of the pop upbeat genre, like to experiment and to push in terms of my sound and in terms of my lyrics. Um, Obviously, whilst maintaining that quite heavy role that I am always going to want to make you cry, Kevin. So I think that for me is the like you say, there's defining factors of what my music is, but this album has explored more of that.
And the last time that we spoke, you described putting an album together as holding a mirror to yourself and asking, what is it you want to say with this body of work? And there's something so profound in the way that this record reflects the many layers of who you are, whether it's the themes, the experiences, the emotions that have shaped you. How did you approach weaving all that together in such a cohesive body of work?
I think it's like I've said before, like you just said there. Every album is a mirror up to me at the point in time that I'm at, saying like, what is it I want to say next? And I think when I look at the previous albums, I explored my sexuality identity on that first album and the struggles I'd had with that. My second album was much more on the mental health side of things, and this third album, I'm listening to it and I'm like, wait a minute, this is way happier than the last two albums. It's way more joyful and way more like. I guess in this album, I'm kind of trying to figure myself out a little bit. I have a song on the album that kind of is a little bit of a nod to the LGBTQ plus community of me just feeling different, but still being
Mhm.
able to find love. With a song called Unsteady.
Yeah.
Kind of feeling like a bit of a me feeling like a little bit of a misfit and feeling like people don't get me or I don't get people and still being able to find love. And I think that's such a beautiful thing and is a very relatable topic. But for some reason, this album just has this kind of like self-discovery and thinking about the future as well. With Gone and with Mad, both songs point to the future and
Yeah.
how finite it can be in Gone, but then the preciousness of it in Mad. Of me wanting to be a dad. So I think even though this album feels joyful, it is still very reflective and it's still very it makes you think a lot, and I think that's kind of where I'm at in my point in life. I've made peace with myself. I've made peace with my demons, and I feel like I don't want to say growing up because I'm clearly growing up, hence the grays in my beard. But as in, like, I feel like more well-rounded.
Hmm.
I feel like I've spoken on the points that feel that I was lacking confidence in, or lacking self-belief in, or even just lacking the ability to forgive, and to sort of move on with those kind of hurdles in my life. I feel like those albums have healed me. Um, and this album feels a bit more celebratory in that way. So I think, to answer your question a bit more directly, I feel like the way that I'm feeling and my self-worth and my belief and my reassurances that I've given myself has kind of shaped the creative around it.
Hmm.
Um, and I definitely wanted to be a bit more creative on this album. I wanted to show people that I'm not just kind of putting bodies of work together. I feel like I wanted to show people that I am thinking of, the track listing and how it all
Yeah.
sits. I am thinking about the album artwork. I am thinking about, the name of the album and the concept. And, that's why this album we called it Avenoir. And then we shaped a track around the title, as opposed to picking a song down the track list and going, we'll call it this. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And even though there is more thought behind it than just going that one, this one felt very intentional,
Yeah.
and it felt very like, I'd read this word Avenoir. I was like, what the hell is this? And I started looking into it. It's a term that was sort of created by a guy called John Koenig, and he was kind of referring to how we move through life almost like a rower, that we are always moving forward but can only see backwards. We can only see where we've been. And his concept was, what if you could turn around in that boat and you could see your memories approaching you? You'd see what your wedding day was going to look like and what your kids would look like, and you'd be able to prepare for the worst days of your life that are coming. These kind of things. And when I was thinking about that, I was thinking, you know what, these 10 years have been the best 10 years of my life, and I would have never been able to predict them in the slightest
Hmm.
bit. I used to work in a human resources office, typing away, dreaming of these things. And very rare in life do dreams come true like this, to this extent. And I think, you know, because I couldn't see them coming has made them so much more special.
Yeah.
Nothing has been predicted. Nothing's been laid out for me. Like I said, as a process to this third album, I realized like I've had to work so hard to be, to have the amount of streams that we've had and the amount of people coming to the shows. I've had to work so hard, and that's kind of been what's reassured me to move forward. And I think, nothing was given; it was all sort of worked hard for, and it it was all a surprise. When you think it can't get any better, it's like, oh, would you like to sing for the king of your country for his coronation in his back garden, just
Hmm.
casually? Yeah. Oh my God, how can it get better than that? Oh, would you like to do a duet with Whitney Houston's voice? And I'm like, how can it get better than that? And it just seems to continue to get better. And I think that's what's exciting about it, is that I've not seen any of it coming. It reminds you that actually it's not seeing what's coming is what keeps
Yeah.
you ambitious and hopeful and excited, and it keeps your dreams big. So it's an important one for me, this album.
It's a great message for anyone that's listening to the album. I think intentional is such a great word to describe it, where the first half feels very much the signature Calum that we know. The middle is very much this exploration, a lot of fun. And then to your point, at the end is very much about the future. And I think what's so special about this album is that with each listen, a different song resonates in a new way. Has there been a
Oh,
track that's taken on a different meaning for you now compared to maybe when you first wrote it or recorded it?
ooh, good question, Kevin. For me, Gone was, at the time, felt
Mm,
like a beautiful song, and yet it's such a stark reminder that life is so fragile and can change at any minute. And I think, having been around some awful things this year with friends and family and loved ones, it really is a reminder that things can change in a heartbeat. And it was so funny that the concept of that song came around from when I was talking to my producer in the studio, and he has two young daughters. And I said to him, I was like, isn't it so strange that one day you're going to pick up your youngest, you're going to give her a little cuddle, you'll put her back down, and you'll just never pick her up again. And then that kind of, that was just a throwaway comment. I just thought, oh, how weird is that? You know, the last time you feed them with this, with, you know, their food,
Hmm.
or the last time you bottle feed or whatever it is. And I just was, it was very much about just his daughters and kind of being a parent and that last thing. And then you just think, geez, like you never know when your last kiss is going to be, or your last goodbye, or your last laugh with a friend, or whatever it is. And like, I'm not going to lie, you sat there and you're just thinking, Jesus, it is a little bit of like a kind of quite an in your face, life is short kind of a
Hmm.
vibe. But the more that I've listened to it, the more that I've thought to myself, you know what? It's, if anything, even though it on the surface of it, it's quite, you're sat there like, Jesus, you're like in tears thinking, Christ, I just need to live. But the more I've listened to that over the album, the more I've thought it's actually a really beautiful, less of like a signpost in your face, like live life because it's gone soon. It's almost like a beautiful kind of just a tap on the shoulder going, give them another hug. Say you love them again.
Yeah.
Rekindle that relationship with your friend. Go and do that thing that you say you've been. It's almost like the little voice on, you know, on the on your shoulder, the little angel that just that you don't pay any attention to because you're so, you know, about the future and about getting things done and the here and now and bills and all this kind of stuff. And then you take a minute to just pause and go, I want to make things better with my
Yeah.
friend, you know. And it's those little things that I think of every time I listen to it. I just go, I want to do that little bit more, or I want to repair that thing, or you know what I mean. It's beautiful, albeit on the surface incredibly sad.
Yeah, it's very introspective yet hopeful, and I think that's been kind of a crux of your career, where there is that beautiful juxtaposition in a lot of the songs that you've created. Your artistry has always been rooted in making people feel seen, and the way that you paint these lyrics, it feels like a tapestry of emotions and experience. And it's so beautiful to hear that reference in Mad about creating space for your future child to be that painter. And songs like that, I think, truly have impact on the world, especially for our community, because it's so vulnerable to share your hopes, your dreams, and your vision for that future. Firstly, why was it so important for you to have that particular song on this album? And is there another lyric on the record that you feel carries the same kind of impact?
Ooh, God, you're good, Kevin. Um, I think I think the thing with the with Mad is I, like I said, in every album I always try and give a piece of myself, and you know, I take a piece of my heart out and I put it in the album. And you know, you listen to the lyrics of a lot of songs and it's a lot of my heart, but there's almost like a part that I know I'm never going to get back. You know, they always say about that, like when you have a relationship with somebody, you give that piece of your heart to them, and you know that it's not returnable. You know, and I think that with my albums. And I think my first album was definitely the vulnerability of talking about my sexuality. I was so terrified in those early days to talk about my sexuality because I'd lost a lot of people along the way growing up by talking about my sexuality. And
Hmm.
so I'd buried it. And, you know, as a lot of the LGBTQ plus community and can attest, you know, when you bury down that kind of, you know, a conflict in your mind of who you want to be versus who you present yourself to be, I think, you know, it causes all sorts of trauma and all sorts of upset, and you know, and it made life really difficult for me. And that first album, you know, talking about that was huge. I remember being in the label, crying my eyes out, going, I don't know how to talk about this. And it was through music and through my song No Matter What from the first album that really kind of, I made peace with it. And then the second album, it was definitely about, you know, a much darker time in my life when I was going through, you know, that the identity crisis that I had, but then also a lot of, you know, I'd created a body dysmorphia problem that I had. I had a lot of low self worth, a lot of low confidence and low self esteem. And there was a time in my life, as per the song Bridges on the album, where I was in a point. I felt like a point of no return. I felt like it can never get any better than this. I'm at the lowest point in my life. And talking about, putting it very frankly, talking about suicide was such a big deal to me. There's, you know, that's probably the most uh, private that I think I'd ever been publicly, if that makes sense. You know, it
Hmm.
was something that I never thought that I would talk about because it was just such a, I was so embarrassed that I'd allowed myself to get to that point of being on a bridge looking over the edge. You know, that looking back on it now, I'm not embarrassed by it, but at the time I was so ashamed of myself. And so, but talking about that again healed me. And the messages I would get from people saying, oh my God, that
Yeah.
song saved my life, I've been there. So again, I go around the houses, Kevin, you know this. The third album was very much like I was looking inside of myself and I was like, it's never a case of what do I want to put in the album that I'm never going to get back, but it was like in every album I've been honest, that honesty has been reflected back at me from the fans, and we
Mm.
share this relationship of honesty
Yeah.
and you know and relatability. And you know, for me on this album, I was kind of I'd said what I needed to say. I'd made peace with myself on a lot of things, and for me, Mad was the thing that I'd not shared with a lot of people, which is the desperate need to want to be a dad, you know. And in some ways, talking about Mad is a little bit of it's kind of for me filling a hole and a void in my life about the relationship I had with my dad, which wasn't great. My dad left when I was 2 and moved away to Canada, and you know I didn't have that father figure in my life, and that was really tough for me. And that again, something that I'd not talked about publicly. And you know, for me, Mad was the song that kind of heals that part of me of, you know, if I didn't necessarily have a father figure in my life, so that means by God, I am going to be the best father figure I can be for my child. And I think just that vulnerability of, like you said,
Yeah.
talking about my hopes and dreams and what I want from the future is you know putting it out there for everybody, you know, to see and you know and I think that was the part of me that I wanted to put in this album that really meant a lot. And when you listen to Mad, after Mad, there's this beautiful interlude which we called Avenoir, obviously,
Hmm.
and it just this music just takes you on a journey, and it really, for me, feels like it comes full 360 because in the first part of the passage, there's we buried a little voice clip that was from my nephew, and he'd been listening to some of my brand new music, and he sent me a voice clip, and he said, um, "Good job, mate, well done." And it's such a cute little thing of just like my nephew for me has been like my little boy. I love him so much, and
Mm.
I care about him so much. And having his approval, you know, my music meant such a lot. And then as you get towards the end of Avenoir, you hear a baby cry, which is actually my best friend's baby who was born on the 25th of December, 2024. And it's a nod to where I want my life to go. And I think having those really two important people in my life on this record and what they signified to me just means that Mad and the extension of Mad is just such. I mean, I cry every time I listen to it. It's just such a beautiful, like, it's just such a beautiful hope for the future and dream for the future that's kind of been, you know, ingrained into this album and shall live on. So yeah, that was the most vulnerable part of me, I think, on this album.
I need to go back and listen to that again to hear the sort
Yeah,
of
honestly,
what.
and you're listening to it and you're just like,
Yeah, you give so much of yourself to your craft. I think that's why your music has resonated. Final question for you, but I also want to give you such
sorry,
a
Kevin, I know
big.
I talk a lot. I
No,
just
no, no. I love it. You're so thoughtful in your music and your answers, your responses. It's so obvious how much this album means to you and all the other albums that you put together. But I also want to give you a really, really big compliment because I saw you in New York at the Beacon Theater in 2024, I believe. It was such a testament to your professionalism and your artistry. It's one of my favorite sets of yours that I've ever seen live. I remember thinking you were doing so many cool things with your vocals and reinventing these songs that we know and love. And then I found out you were sick. So all that to say is, as you embark on this third world tour and you're doing something really special by inviting local artists to support you along the way, why has that been so important part of this upcoming tour? And also, as your catalog has grown, is there a song that will always make that set list?
ooh, Kevin, you do good at these like double questions. I like it. I think to answer your question, and I'll flip it just because I think the obvious answer for me is you are the reason. I mean, it's got to for me, You Are the Reason signifies so much. For me, You Are the Reason was the song that helped me break out of this torment that I was giving myself, that I'm only good for a cover. I'm a one trick pony. I'm never going to have another song that's anywhere near as big as the version of Dance on My Own. You Are the Reason saved me from that. I think it's every artist's worst nightmare when you have a big hit, is being like, how the hell am I going to follow that up? And I think for me, You Are the Reason saved me. And it's such a beautiful record in the sense that it's so simple, and yet it speaks to so many people. And I don't know whether that's the key ingredient, is that it says things in a really matter of fact, poetic way. I
Hmm.
would climb every mountain, I would swim every ocean, and I want to, you're the reason. It's the amount of people who come up to me and say, I used that song to dance at my first wedding, my first dance song at my wedding, or I walked down the aisle to that song. And it's like people are using that song to immortalize a moment in time with the people that they love, in front of the people that they love. And they've chosen my song out of millions of songs on the planet. My song is just the highest accolade. It's going to be better than any Grammy or any Brit or any
Yeah.
award I can think of. That is the highest accolade that they've gone. Your song will soundtrack this moment for the rest of our lives. Is Makes me want to cry my eyes out, Kevin. I think, and that's always going to be part of the set. I think if I didn't, there'd be outrage. And then I think in terms of the supports, obviously last year I was on tour with Ed Sheeran, and just knowing what Ed's done for me in the sense of my confidence, my stagecraft, putting me in the deep end, like physically, putting me in stadiums in the round where there is nowhere to hide. I mean, I needed that. That was what I needed to grow to this next level. And it's probably what helped me with my self-worth and my confidence and everything I talked about for this third album. And I just think, when I think about my own life and I think about my tour, and what I now have the option to do, which is to find my own support, I just thought to myself, sometimes life is about right time, right place. And I think for me, with my audition with Britain's Got Talent, for example, which was definitely one of the stepping stones to where I'm at now, I still had to travel. I still had to go to a city 2 hours from my hometown. I auditioned, and then I had to travel down to London to do the TV show. And ever since then, I've had to travel. And I know that there are some people who don't have access to that. They don't have the resources to be able to get to a different city or to travel. And I just think, I'm coming to all these different places. I was like, how amazing would it be to create the opportunity there in their hometown, where they could come into the city and they could perform, and they're local to that area or local to that country. I wanted to create the moment, the way that I had a moment. I wanted to create that for somebody else. And as I get older, I'm 36 now, as you can tell from the grace. And I want to help. I want to use my platform. It's all well and good me making beautiful little pop songs, but I want to do good beyond my music. I want to use my influence. I want to use my platforms. I want to use the work I do with the charities and
Yeah.
my knowledge, just to continue doing what I do in my music, which is to just help people. And for me, it was so important, to have these openers. It's been a struggle because we got 12,000 submissions, Kevin. But it's been a joy. It's been a joy to listen to this talent that I might not have ever heard.
Mm.
I've put a playlist together, and I'm gonna put out this playlist when we've chosen our support, so that even the people who I haven't chosen, I can sort of help with a little playlist that I've curated. And I just want to do good. My grandma, God bless her soul, died many years ago now. But something that has stuck very true in my head is, if you can do good, then you should. And I'm in a position where I can do good, and so I should. And that's kind of as simple as I can make it.